Have you heard of the famous pattern of the Straw Hat Devil Fruit numbers? If you list out all of the Straw Hat Devil Fruits, their names correspond to Japanese numbers from 1 to 10. Luffy is Gomu Gomu, 5656, Chopper is Hito Hito, 110 110, Robin is Hana Hana, 8787, and Brook is Yomi Yomi, 4343. But there are two numbers still missing, 2929. The same numbers corresponding to the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi, Kuma's Paw Fruit. This pattern and the missing Devil Fruit numbers are not a random, insignificant fan observation. Oda was outright asked about the pattern and why the Nikyu fruit is the one missing piece. And Oda was notably flustered and avoided answering the question. The immediate assumptions that readers made at the time was that Kuma must be the missing Straw Hat, who will eventually join the crew to complete the cycle, but I think most would agree that this doesn't make sense. So why is it then that this pattern of Devil Fruit numbers exists for the crew, and yet the one character that can complete the pattern would not be a viable Straw Hat candidate? I think the simple answer is that everyone was looking at this puzzle the wrong way. In actuality, the only thing the Devil Fruit pattern means is that someone with the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi will complete the crew, and in fact, I think that individual is already in the crew. Vivi, the honorary Straw Hat. By the end of One Piece, I think we will see Nefertari Vivi with the Paw Fruit, because I believe it is the same fruit that Vivi's ancestor Nefertari Lily used 800 years ago during the Void Century to spread the poneglyphs all across the world. That was the crime that Imu specifically tied Lily to, a single act of hers in defiance of the world government that spread the poneglyphs around the world, something only possible with the Paw Fruit. Confused by how it all ties together? Well, let me connect the story of Lily from 800 years ago to the story of Vivi in the modern day, and how the Paw Fruit is the key to both the beginning of the Will of D and the upcoming dawn of the world. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more videos every week. So to begin with, the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi is one of the most underrated yet most important plot devices in the entire story. Part of the reason that the One Piece world feels so vast is not just because of its actual size, but because of how difficult it actually is to travel around the world. As an epic adventure story, by necessity the One Piece world has to be filled with countless obstacles and impediments to movement. Characters can't just easily travel from island to island, let alone across vast stretches of the sea. In fact, difficulty of travel is one of the defining characteristics of the One Piece world. Navigation is impossible, only log posts can take you to the next island. But even log posts require days and sometimes even years to reset. And that doesn't even take into account the numerous natural hazards, the calm belt that restricts any sort of movement between the Grand Line and the Four Blues, and the Red Line that restricts any movement between hemispheres. It is ridiculously difficult to move anywhere at all in the One Piece world. That's why, even though the starting point of the story is actually geographically extremely close to the eventual final destination, it will still take over 1,000 chapters to get there. Everything in One Piece takes time. It takes time for a fleet of ships to travel to Egghead Island. It takes time to travel from one Yonko's territory to another. You can't rely on help or allies to come on short notice. Everything and everyone is spread out, and there are no shortcuts to moving around. That is except for the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi. In the entirety of the One Piece world, this fruit is one of the absolute most valuable, as it breaks the rules of the universe. The one and only method to traverse the seas with ease, across any and all distances, is the Paw Fruit. The only way to move other people and objects easily throughout the world is the Paw Fruit. Oda wrote this fruit in as the ultimate cheat code for when pieces needed to be moved around the world very fast, bypassing the many rules of travel that he had written into the setting. We saw this of course most notably with the Straw Hat Pirates themselves. The only way to completely break the crew without killing them, to completely separate them in a manner in which they could not easily regroup, to put each of them in a perfect location to train their strength, the Paw Fruit was the perfect plot device to accomplish all of this in a single chapter. And I don't think this was the only key use of it in the story. The Paw Fruit likely had a much more important role 800 years ago, to do one crucial thing that can only be accomplished with this specific fruit. and I believe it has one final role to play in the present day as well. First, looking back at the Void Century and the act of rebellion that Lily committed, Imu first refers to it as a mistake, but based on the fact that it seems as though Lily was punished for her action, and the fact that she is a member of the D tribe, Imu seems to believe that it was a deliberate act. Now, throughout One Piece, the poneglyphs have been a long-running mystery. Who made them, what is their purpose, and how were they spread to so many obscure locations? Slowly, more of the pieces have come together. They were carved by the Kazuki family. They were left behind by Joy Boy and the D tribe to relay messages to the future so that the will of D can one day be fulfilled. But the final key question is, who spread them throughout the world, and how? This is actually a huge missing piece to the puzzle, as it should be practically impossible to spread the poneglyphs throughout the world to all the locations that they reached, as the poneglyph locations span literally the entire globe, from the fortress nation of Wano to the bottom of the ocean floor in Fishman Island to even outside the Grand Line in the Four Blues. How would it be possible for the Ancient Kingdom, as it is being defeated by the allied nations of the world, to send so many ships carrying poneglyphs all across the planet and successfully hide them without being caught? Remember, in the One Piece world, fast travel is pretty much impossible, and most importantly, the timing of the scattering of the poneglyphs. Lily was made to disappear only after the world government had already won the war against the Ancient Kingdom. This suggests that Lily was deemed a problem after the war was won, and her act of rebellion took place only after the war was won. As such, it seems especially unlikely that all the poneglyphs could be spread across the world through traditional means after the Ancient Kingdom was already completely crushed. However, the phrasing by Im makes it sound as though it was a singular event that spread the poneglyphs. Something that Lily did on that fateful day, that caused the poneglyphs to be spread across the world. How does that make sense? What single act could she do that could allow for the spread of poneglyphs throughout the entire planet? There is literally only one method we know of in all of One Piece that would allow someone to scatter various people or objects across the planet in a single instant, and that is the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi. Using the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi, Lily was likely able to send the poneglyphs to all the most important islands: Wano, Fishman Island, Zou, Shandia, Alabasta, and so on. Islands that were very possibly allied with the D tribe before the Void Century. I think it would be fittingly symbolic if the ruler of Alabasta was the one to release all the poneglyphs to the world, as the Alabasta arc itself is interestingly the point that Oda chose to first write poneglyphs into the story. And that brings me to the second part of the theory, which is far more speculative, but at the same time it could connect the story of Lily and the Paw Fruit to the modern day question of the Straw Hats and the missing Devil Fruit in their numbered pattern. Again, we have every number accounted for except for 2 and 9, Nikyu Nikyu, a missing piece that Oda himself tries to avoid discussing. What if, in the modern day, Vivi is meant to get the Paw Fruit as well, to serve a different purpose, yet in many ways a parallel purpose to her ancestor Lily? A purpose that in some ways brings Lily's will full circle and completes the Nefertari family's role in bringing back the dawn. Now, this theory is based on Bartholomew Kuma dying. He would have to in order for the Paw Fruit to be passed on. That is of course why it is fair to be skeptical, as characters dying in One Piece in general is a long shot. However, it has begun to become a lot more commonplace in the final saga. In particular, I think Oda is generally more comfortable killing off characters who fulfill either or both of two criteria. First, Oda seems comfortable killing characters who are already close to death in some way, such as Whitebeard, who was already on life support, Pedro, who had very little lifespan left, Cobra, who was dying of illness. These are often easy targets for the chopping block. But even beyond that, Oda seems to be comfortable with killing characters who themselves are okay with dying. Characters who are willing to go out on their own terms, having fulfilled some sort of goal of theirs. These are characters like Ace, who died happy having answered the question of whether or not he should have been born. Ashura Doji, who had wanted to die honorably during the initial battle with Kaido 20 years ago, and viewed the raid as a redemption chance for an honorable death. Izzo also came in ready to die, Pedro wanted to sacrifice himself to bring the dawn, Cobra just wanted to learn the truth before he died, and so on. Right now, Bartholomew Bartholomew Kuma fits both of those criteria, of being close to death and being prepared to go out on his own terms. Kuma is already stated to essentially be beyond saving. He is a shell of himself who gave up his mind and body long ago. It is entirely possible that Vegapunk does have some secret way of bringing his old self back, so I'm not ruling out that possibility. However, at the moment, Oda is framing things as though the Kuma that we once knew is nearly gone. But beyond that, Kuma is also seemingly ready to go out in some sort of blaze of glory. He seems to be making an almost suicidal final stand. With his last semblance of consciousness, he's traveling up the Red Line all by himself to confront the gods who once tormented him. And finally, right now we're also looking at Bonnie, who is kind of being framed in that classic mold of young protagonist of the new generation who loses a parental figure, just like the Straw Hats, Vivi, Momonosuke, and so on. Again, predicting that anyone dies in One Piece is dicey, but I think the odds are decently high for Kuma. And the bigger reason that this could matter is in the potential it has for Vivi's story. Vivi has some important role to play in the final saga of One Piece. That much is becoming more and more clear. From the very introduction of Imu and him choosing Vivi's picture above every other major threat, Luffy, Blackbeard, even Shirahoshi, to now the Egghead Island arc with the truth of the world being realized by King Cobra as he dies, with him asking for it specifically to be passed on to Luffy and Vivi, to Vivi now being one of the key character storylines that we're following in the wake of the Reverie. She clearly is a pivotal figure for some reason or another, but what? What impact can Vivi have on the world that Luffy and even Sabo and the revolutionaries cannot? I have talked about this before in past videos, but there is one role that Vivi can fulfill, a role that is absolutely necessary for the final war, a role that can be fulfilled by her and her alone. I think we can assume that the truth of Imu's existence and the world government's evil nature has to be revealed to the broader world by the end of the story, so that the rest of the nations of the world can actually understand that they are living under a dictatorship and that the ruling powers need to be overthrown. Because if the truth is never revealed, then there can't really be a dawn of the world. If the various nations of the world never even find out that they've been living under an evil authoritarian empire, then when the Straw Hats and revolutionaries defeat the world government, it will just seem like a huge terrorist attack that just destroyed all existing order and threw the world into chaos. There would be no sense of freedom, there would be no dawn. The nations of the world need to first realize that they are being oppressed before they can celebrate being freed. That's why the seeds have already started, with a handful of nations starting to realize the truth and standing against the world government. However, there's still a long way to go before the entire world realizes the truth. And when that happens, the big question is, how will the countless nations of the world be united? How will they come together to stand against the world government? How will they be organized and motivated to join the war? I think this is where Vivi has her true value. I don't think it's a coincidence that now, at the turning point of the world, Cobra has passed away and Vivi has just become the official ruler of Alabasta. Because Alabasta is one of the most famous, respected nations of the world, and Vivi, above all else, has always been framed as the ultimate diplomat. That is her character, literally from her childhood, where she was already expertly navigating the politics of the Reverie to keep the peace between nations, to her adventures with the Straw Hats, where Vivi actually taught Luffy the power of diplomacy and how to get help in times of need, to the climax of Alabasta, where Vivi was the only one who could mend the bridge between the royal army and the rebellion to stop the war. Vivi is and always has been the ultimate diplomat in One Piece. That is her greatest strength, in which she has been portrayed as unparalleled amongst all the characters that we know. And the final step in her character journey that we left off at was her about to take the final step to become the Queen of Alabasta and represent Alabasta on the world stage. Now that time has come, and now is the time for Vivi, as the Queen of Alabasta in the advent of a great world war, to have her skills shine as a diplomat in uniting the various nations of the world. That's right, I personally believe that Vivi's role will be most valuable in doing what Sabo and Dragon may not be able to do as revolutionaries, and that Luffy and the Straw Hats may not be able to do as pirates. Yes, there are plenty of citizens from various nations that are willing to join the revolutionary army of their own accord, and yes, there are plenty of nations that would already willingly ally with the Straw Hat pirates because the Straw Hats saved them in the past. But what about all the other countless nations across the planet? What about all these nations that came together at the reverie, the 150 nations in the world government that are soon going to be thrown into total disarray once the true nature of the ruling authoritarian empire that lords over the world is revealed. I believe that Vivi is the one key protagonist that has been written into One Piece as an honorary Straw Hat yet separate from the Straw Hats to be an official political leader, an important queen in the world who excels at diplomacy, the one key protagonist who has the capacity to convince the nations of the world that what they must do is join forces against the true evil, the world government. And this is where things come back to the Paw Fruit. If Lily had the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi and once used it to scatter the poneglyphs to the world, thereby planting the seeds for revolution against the world government far in the future, then what if her descendant 800 years down the line is destined to inherit that same fruit and complete the mission? The greatest use of the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi today that I can imagine would be to spread a message. Once the mask of the world government is ripped off, in that time of global turmoil and panic, what if there could be one figure, a respected queen, that could travel across the globe from nation to nation to meet with the leader of every island, explain what is happening, and rally them to the side of the rebellion. To rally every nation to raise the flag of the Dawn against the world government, like Cobra wanted. Think about it. The kings of all these various nations may not listen to a pirate or a revolutionary. We know how the politics on the global scale work. These kings and queens listen to each other, to other trusted and respected leaders of nations. A meeting between the ruler of Alabasta and Bollywood to gain their support in the war. A meeting between the ruler of Alabasta and Tajin to gain their support in the war. This is the perfect type of role that Vivi, and Vivi alone, can shine in. If there's any one key role that Vivi can have in the Dawn of the World, it would be in this. Not in combat, but in diplomacy, in alliances, in politics, in bringing all the nations on the sidelines to the right side. And that is where the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi could potentially be the perfect fruit for Vivi to inherit. Again, it's the ultimate plot device, the cheat code that breaks the boundaries of long distances in the One Piece world and allows characters to traverse the globe instantly. If 800 years ago Lily used it to send out the poneglyphs, what if Vivi today gets the same fruit and uses it to personally spread the message of the Dawn across the world? The perfect way for Vivi to travel from island to island rapidly and speak to every leader that she needs to speak to, the Queen of Alabasta showing up at the doorstep of every distraught and confused nation in the face of a coming world war and telling them the side that they need to join. If Lily once used that fruit to spread a message across the world, would it not be fitting if Vivi today used that same fruit to spread a final message across the world? Vivi's ancestor once planting the seeds of rebellion for the future, and Vivi today being the one to bring that rebellion to fruition. It's not the first time that we've seen fruits inherited over the centuries to play out the same role in the future. After all, we just saw it with Luffy, Joy Boy, and the Nika fruit, so why not with Vivi, her ancestor Lily, and the Paw Fruit? The final question really comes down to Kuma's death and whether it'll happen or not, and of course whether or not Kuma's fruit could even reach Vivi, although I don't think this point would matter as much as Kuma in his dying moments could teleport himself anywhere in the world. So, potentially the final piece of the Straw Hat Devil Fruit Code, 2-9, the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi, held by the honorary Straw Hat member, Vivi, by the end of the story, carrying on the will and legacy of her ancestor Lily, who very likely was the one responsible for spreading the poneglyphs across the world in defiance of Imu 800 years ago. Vivi could use the Paw Fruit today to bring Lily's will full circle, with Vivi playing out the one role that she and only she can perform, personally befriending and bringing the leaders of all the various nations of the world over to the side of the Alliance in the final war for the Dawn of the World. So let me know what you think of Lily, the Paw Fruit, and Vivi in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like and subscribe. And you can get my extended thoughts on this and all future topics on my exclusive podcast by supporting me on Patreon. Just hit the link in the description below.